Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. We've been reading for some time now, more than a year, the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Well, yeah, much more than a year. And we've come to the 11th canto, and Maharaja Nimi, the king of Videha, has met the 9 Yogendras, the 9 sons of Rishabdev, incarnation of God, who became Paramahamsas, who wandered the earth preaching the glories of devotional service, Krishna consciousness. So we're going to start hearing now from each one of those 9 Yogendras a different topic, which puts us even deeper, if that's possible, after hearing the first 2 cantos of the Bhagavatam. Each Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3,235, something like that, that have something to say substantially. And of course, Narada Muni is the prominent, and Lord Brahma. They're very prominent speakers in the Bhagavatam, and Maitreya and Shukadev. But the 9 Yogendras are very special. So let's hear from them. First we have to hear from Sanatana Goswami, who is the senior by age and by level of responsibility member of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And he compiled the Virat Bhagavatamrita and the Hari Bhakti Vilas and many other scriptures, having been instructed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 2 months solid, the most time that Lord Chaitanya spent with anybody. And when Rupa Goswami met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the second time in Jagannath Puri, he was glorifying Rupa Goswami in front of the most intimate associates, Ramananda Roy, Swarup Damodar, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and others. And in his glorification of Rupa Goswami, he mentions that he met Rupa Goswami because everyone was saying that this poetry that he's writing is something, no one can write like this. Even Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar were the connoisseurs of rasa. They couldn't believe how beautiful Rupa Goswami's poetry was, glorifying the holy name and glorifying the pastimes of the Lord. And then in doing that, then Lord Chaitanya mentioned Sanatana Goswami, and he said, oh yes, I met him and his brother. And Sanatana Goswami is also highly qualified, most qualified. So Lord Chaitanya spoke very highly of him, even in the presence of Rupa Goswami and his eternal associate. So he's highest authority on the level of Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami. And so he wrote this glorification of Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the prime scripture for the Kali Yuga. There's a verse that mentions that when Krishna left, the absolute truth went to rest in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is a literary incarnation of Krishna, which delivers Krishna to the fallen souls of the Kali Yuga, who are not so intelligent to go through all the Vedas and figure out that Krishna is the summum Brahman, or the goal of the Vedas. So it's for us, it's been brought into the world by Vyasadeva, given to Shukadev Goswami, heard by Sutta Goswami, and then recited by Sutta Goswami, and then we finally got it. It was not written down until after that time. And so we finally got it in written form, And now Srila Prabhupada has translated it into English for the first time by a pure devotee of Krishna. And it is not possible to explain fully how important or how deep the Srimad-Bhagavatam is. Suffice it to say that it is Krishna. So let's read this prayer we do every day to help us go deeper into the subject. Srimad-Bhagavatam Hima Stotram by Srila Sanatana Goswami. It appears in the Sri Krishna Lila Stava, which is also a book by Sanatana Goswami, and you will find it in verses 412 to 416, 5 verses. It goes like this. Sarvasyastrabdi piyusha sarvavedaika satpala sarvasiddhanta ratnaja sarvalokaika drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwan Duditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the, in the darkness of Kali, you are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsanghin Madguru Man Mahadana Man Nishtada Gavadbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu saduta dayin atini chochatakara hanamuncha kadachin mam premna rit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we've had quite an introduction to this part of the Bhagavatam in the first verses of the second chapter of the 11th canto. But now we've reached the 28th chapter, and King Videha, or Maharaja Nimi, is welcoming the great sages. King Videha said, I think that you must be direct associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is famous as the enemy of the demon Madhu. Indeed, the pure devotees of Lord Vishnu wander throughout the universe, not for their personal selfish interest, but to purify all the conditioned souls. Purport. King Nimi here welcomes the great sages by glorifying their transcendental activities. It is well known that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the three modes of material nature, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 7:13, Mamebhyak Paramabhyayam. Similarly, his pure devotees are also on the transcendental platform. One may ask how such transcendental living beings as the associates of Lord Vishnu could be seen within the material world. Therefore it is stated here, Pavanaya Charanti Hi. The associates of Lord Vishnu travel throughout the universe to reclaim the fallen, conditioned souls on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A representative of the governor may be seen moving within the prison house, but that does not mean that the governor's representative has become a conditioned prisoner. I think you read this. Anyway, it's good to hear it again. It is understood that he is within the prison to negotiate the possible release of those prisoners who have rectified their criminal propensity. Similarly, the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, called Parivarjakacharyas, wander throughout the universe, inviting everyone to surrender to Lord Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. In the 6th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the mercy of the associates of Lord Vishnu has been described in connection with the salvation of Ajamil. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has pointed out that the associates of Lord Vishnu are as merciful as the Lord himself. Even though the ignorant members of human society are not interested in approaching the servants of Lord Vishnu, the devotees of the Lord, without any false prestige, act to liberate the conditioned souls from their perpetual misfortune. Text 29. For the conditioned souls, the human body is most difficult to achieve, and it can be lost at any moment. But I think that even those who have achieved human life rarely gain the association of pure devotees who are dear to the Lord of Vaikuntha. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word Dehinam means Bahavo Deha Bhavanti Yesham Te. The conditioned souls who accept innumerable material bodies. According to some wishful thinkers, a living entity in the human form of life will never be degraded to a lower form, such as that of an animal or plant. But despite this wishful thinking, it is a fact that according to our activities at the present, we will be elevated or degraded by the laws of God. At the present time, in human society, there is no clear or precise understanding of the nature of life. Foolish scientists have invented highly sophisticated terminologies and theories to bluff innocent people into believing that life comes from chemical reactions. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, has exposed this bluff in his book, Life Comes from Life, which points out that although scientists claim that life comes from chemicals, they cannot produce so much as an insect, even from unlimited quantities of chemicals. Actually, life and consciousness are symptoms of the spirit soul. In Life Comes from Life, page 43, Srila Prabhupada has stated, living beings move from one bodily form to another. The forms already exist. The living entity simply transfers himself, just as a man transfers himself from one apartment to another. One apartment is first class, another is second class, and another is third class. Suppose a person comes from a lower class apartment to a first class apartment. The person is the same, but now, according to his capacity for payment or karma, he is able to occupy a higher class apartment. Real evolution does not mean physical development, but development of consciousness. Within every species of life, there is consciousness, and that consciousness is the symptom of the living entity, who is the superior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without understanding this essential point of the transmigration of the conscious living entity throughout 8,400,000 species of life, one cannot possibly understand the words Durlabho Manusho Deha. The human body is very rarely achieved. People are now being cheated of this essential understanding. They are completely unaware of the danger of slipping back into the 8 million species that lie below the human species. It is natural that a human being think in terms of progress. We want to feel that our life is progressing and that we are advancing and improving the quality of our life. Therefore, it is urgent that people be informed of the great danger of misusing the valuable human life, and that they know of the great opportunity the human life affords, the opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. Just as on earth, different residential areas are divided into high class, middle class, and low class, within the universe there are upper class, middle class, and lower class planets. By practice of the yoga system, or by meticulous execution of religious rituals, one can transfer himself to the higher planets within this universe. On the other hand, by neglecting religious principles, one will degrade himself to a lower planet. But the Supreme Lord Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita 8:16, Abrahma bhuvana loka punar avartanorjuna. Thus, the final conclusion is that every planet within the material universe is an unsuitable and inappropriate residence, because on each planet there are primal defects of old age and death. The Lord assures us, however, that in His transcendental abode, which lies far beyond the material cosmos, life is everlasting, blissful, and absolutely cognizant. The material world is temporary, troublesome, and rife with ignorance. But the spiritual world, called Vaikuntha, is eternal, blissful, and full of perfect knowledge. The highly evolved human brain is a gift given by God so that we may use our intelligence to distinguish between that which is eternal and that which is temporary. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 2:16, Na sato vijite bhavo, na bhavo vijite sataha, ubayor apidrishnontas, tvanayos tatvadarshibhihi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that matter has no permanent existence, whereas the spirit soul never ceases to exist. Learned seers have concluded this by studying the nature of both. Those who have accepted the Supreme Lord and His abode as the ultimate goal of life are called Vaikuntha Priya. Here King Nimi states that to have the personal association of such learned transcendentalists is certainly the perfection of human life. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur suggests that we consider the following verse, Nrideham adyam sulabam sudurlabam plavam sukalpam gurukarnadaram mayanukulena nabasvetaditam puman bhavadim natarit sa'atmaha. The Supreme Lord said, the best of bodies, a human body, is a great attainment, rarely achieved, and may be compared to a boat. The Guru is an expert captain for this boat, and I have sent favorable winds, the Vedas. Thus I have given all facilities for crossing over the ocean of material existence. Any human being who has achieved these excellent facilities of human life but does not cross over the material ocean is to be considered the killer of his own self. Bhagavatam 11:20, 17. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord, being controlled by powerful feelings of mercy, descend into the material world as Vaishnavas to deliver the conditioned souls who are bound by the results of their own mundane work. Such Vaishnavas also distribute their mercy to those who are laboriously searching after the impersonal Absolute. Sri Narada Muni has stated that without ecstatic love of Godhead, Such laborious, impersonal contemplation of the Absolute is certainly troublesome. Naishkarmyam apyachutta bhava varjitam. And what to speak of the innumerable problems of ordinary, gross materialistic life? We have practical experience that in the Western countries, most people are working hard to get money, laboring under heavenly dreams of sense gratification. Others, having become frustrated with ordinary materialistic life, are trying to negate their personal existence and merge into the existence of God through so-called yoga and meditation. Both classes of unhappy people are receiving the mercy of the Krishna consciousness movement, putting aside their dreams of sense gratification, as well as their troublesome, impersonal speculation. They are learning to chant the holy names of God, dance in ecstasy, and feast on the holy food offered to the Lord. They become enlivened by the transcendental knowledge spoken by the Lord Himself in the Bhagavad Gita. As the Lord states in the Bhagavad Gita 9.2, Susukam kartamavyayam, the actual process of spiritual freedom is joyful to perform and has nothing to do with fruitive activities aimed at sense gratification or with dry, impersonal speculation. More and more people are taking to the process of Krishna consciousness, becoming joyful and eagerly distributing Krishna's mercy to others. Thus the whole world will be enlivened and inspired by the Krishna consciousness movement, which is the practical demonstration of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Text 30. These purports are absolutely out of this world. Isn't it? Isn't it? Text 30. Therefore, O completely sinless ones, and that's just the person who's going to ask the questions. Therefore, O completely sinless ones, I ask you to kindly tell me what the supreme good is. After all, even half a moment's association with pure devotees within this world of birth and death is a priceless treasure for any man. Purport. The word Shevadi, or a great treasure, is significant in this verse. Just as an ordinary man is overjoyed to discover an unexpected treasure, one who was actually intelligent is overjoyed to gain the association of a pure devotee of the Lord, by which one's life can easily be perfected. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the words Atyantikam Chimam, or the supreme good, indicate that situation in which one cannot be touched by even the slightest fear. Now we are entangled in the cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death, samsare, because our entire situation can be devastated in a single moment. We are constantly in fear. But the pure devotees of the Lord can teach us the practical way to free ourselves from material existence, and thus to abolish all types of fear. According to Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, normal etiquette would dictate that a host immediately ask a guest who has arrived about his well-being. But such an inquiry is unsuitable to place before self-satisfied devotees of the Lord, who are themselves the bestowers of all well-being. According to Srila Vishwanath, the king knew that it would be useless to ask the sages about their business affairs, since the only business of the pure devotees of the Lord is the achievement of the supreme goal of life. According to Bhagavad Gita, the goal of life is to free oneself from the cycle of birth and death and reinstate oneself as an eternal servant of God on the platform of spiritual bliss. Pure devotees of the Lord do not waste their time with ordinary mundane affairs. Sometimes foolish relatives of a Vaishnava preacher lament that such a transcendental preacher has not used his life for material business, and that so much money has therefore been lost by the practice of spiritual life. Such ignorant persons cannot imagine the unlimited prosperity available on the spiritual platform to those who have surrendered heart and soul to the mission of the Lord. King Nimi was himself a learned Vaishnava, and therefore he did not foolishly ask the sages about ordinary worldly affairs. He immediately inquired about Atyantikam Chemam, the highest, most perfect goal of life. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the word anaga, O sinless ones, has two meanings. Anaga indicates that the 9 Yogendras were themselves completely free of sins. It also indicates that merely by the great fortune of seeing them and hearing from them submissively, an ordinary sinful man could also be freed of his sins and achieve everything he desired. One might object that since the great sages had just arrived, the king should not have been so impatient as to inquire from them about the perfection of life. Perhaps the king should have waited until the sages themselves invited his inquiry. Such a hypothetical objection is answered by the words Chinardo Pi. Even a single moment's association with pure devotees, or even half a moment's association, is sufficient to give one the perfection of life. An ordinary person who is offered a great treasure will immediately desire to claim such a treasure. Similarly, King Nimi was thinking, why should I consider myself fortunate enough to have such great sages stay here for a long time? Because I am an ordinary person, undoubtedly you will soon be leaving. Therefore, let me immediately take advantage of your holy association. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in this world there are different varieties of mercy, but ordinary mercy cannot bring about the cessation of all unhappiness. In other words, there are many humanitarians, altruists, and social reformers who certainly work for the betterment of humanity. Such persons are universally considered merciful, but in spite of their mercy, humanity continues to suffer in the grip of birth, old age, disease, and death. I may distribute free food to the needy, but even after eating my merciful gift, the recipient will again become hungry, or he will suffer in some other way. In other words, by mere humanitarianism or altruism, people do not actually become free from unhappiness. Their unhappiness is merely postponed or altered. King Nimi was joyful upon seeing the Nava-Yogendras because he knew that they were eternally perfect associates of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he thought, you are not prone to sinful activities like unfortunate, mundane people such as me. Thus, the words you speak carry no deception or exploitation. The materially conditioned souls spend their days and nights discussing various topics of sense gratification. They never find time to hear about transcendental knowledge. But if even only briefly or accidentally they hear Harikatha, topics of Krishna, in the association of pure devotees of the Lord, their propensity to suffer in material existence will slacken. When one sees liberated persons, hears about Krishna from them, remembers their saintly behavior, and so on, one's tendency to bind himself in the illusion of sense gratification is diminished, and he becomes eager to serve the Supreme Lord. Essential truth, spoken concisely, is true eloquence. Text 31. Please speak about how one engages in devotional service to the Supreme Lord, if you consider me capable of properly hearing these topics. When a living entity offers loving service to the Supreme Lord, the Lord is immediately satisfied, and in return, he will give even his own self to the surrendered soul. Purport. Within the material world, there are two classes of mundane philosophers who present their opinions about the Supreme Lord. Some so-called theologians claim that we are infinitely different from God, and therefore they tend to look upon the Lord as something far beyond our power to understand. Such extreme dualistic philosophers outwardly or officially claim to be pious and religious believers in God, but they consider God so much different from that which is within our experience that according to them, there is little profit in even trying to discuss the personality or attributes of the Supreme Lord. Such outwardly faithful persons generally take to fruitive activities and gross materialistic sense gratification, being infatuated with the mundane relationships of the material world, which appear under the headings society, friendship, and love. The Advaitavadis, or non-dualistic philosophers, claim that there is no difference between God and the living entity, and that the highest goal of life is to give up our personal existence, which is due to illusion, and merge into the impersonal Brahman, effulgence, which is devoid of name, form, paraphernalia, and personality. Thus, neither class of speculative philosopher is able to understand the transcendental personality of Godhead. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in his sublime teaching of Achintya Bheda Tattva, or simultaneous oneness and difference, has clearly demonstrated that we are qualitatively one with God, but quantitatively different. God is personal consciousness, and he has his personal form. Similarly, we are also personal consciousness, and ultimately, when liberated, we also have eternal forms. The difference is that the eternal form and personality of the Supreme Lord contain unlimited potency and opulence, whereas our potency and opulence are infinitesimal. We are conscious of our personal body, whereas Lord Krishna, the Absolute Truth, is conscious of everyone's body, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Chaitram Chaitragyam Chapimam Bidi Sarva Chaitreshu Bharata. But although God is infinitely greater than living entity, both God and the living entities are eternal personalities with form, activities, and feelings. The Supreme Lord expands himself into innumerable living entities to enjoy rasas, or ecstatic relationships with them. The living entities are part and parcel of Lord Krishna, and they are meant to serve him with love. Although the Supreme Lord is eternally the predominator, and the living entity is eternally the predominated, when the living entity surrenders unto the Lord with a sincere loving attitude, desiring to serve the Lord eternally without the slightest expectation of personal reward for such service, the Lord immediately is pleased, as expressed here by the word prasanna. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is so unlimitedly merciful and magnanimous that in his gratitude to such a surrendered and loving servitor, he is immediately inclined to offer anything, even himself, to his surrendered devotee. There are numerous practical, historical examples of this loving propensity of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because of the love of Mother Yashoda, child Krishna, in his form as Damodar, surrendered himself to his loving mother and allowed himself to be bound with ropes as a childhood punishment. Similarly, feeling indebted to the Pandavas for their intense joy, love for him, Krishna in his form as Parthasarathi happily agreed to drive the chariot of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Similarly, Krishna in Vrindavan is always thinking of ways to satisfy the gopis, who are universally recognized as the most exalted, loving devotees of the Lord. Such intense loving feelings exchanged between the Lord and his pure devotees would not be possible were the living entities not qualitatively one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and indeed inseparable parts and parcels of the Lord. On the other hand, because both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities are eternally individuals, each with his own eternal individual consciousness, such loving exchanges are a perpetual reality in the kingdom of God. In other words, absolute oneness with God and absolute difference from God are theoretical imaginations of different schools of speculative philosophy. The perfection of spiritual love, as described in this verse, is based on simultaneous oneness and difference. And this absolute reality was elaborately presented by Lord Krishna himself in his Brahminical incarnation as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have expounded this perfect doctrine in innumerable books, culminating in the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has most perfectly presented this knowledge in a way that is understandable, not only in India, but to all the people of the world. Our present insignificant attempt is simply to complete his translation and commentary on Srimad-Bhagavatam, and we are constantly praying for his guidance so that this work can simply be completed exactly as he would have desired. If one can understand these teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as they are being presented in Western languages, surely the Lord will be satisfied with such a sincere seeker of spiritual truth. Hare Krishna. Text 32. Sri Narada said, O Vasudev, when Maharaja Nimi had thus inquired from the 9 Yogendras about devotional service to the Lord, those best of saintly persons sincerely thanked the king for his questions and spoke to him with affection in the presence of the members of the sacrificial assembly and the Brahmana priests. Purport. According to Sridhar Swami, not only the king, but also the members of the assembly and the priests conducting the sacrifice were all devoted to hearing and chanting the glories of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sages, beginning with Kavi, will now each speak in turn, answering the questions of the king. 33. Sri Kavi said, here we go. Now we're going to get the teachings of the sages. You know, the people who are inquiring are deeper than we can imagine. We're to speak to people who are going to answer the questions. Incredible. Sri Kavi said, I consider that one whose intelligence is constantly disturbed by his falsely identifying himself with the temporary material world can achieve real freedom from fear only by worshipping the lotus feet of the infallible Supreme Lord. He gets right to the point. No? In such devotional service, all fear ceases entirely. Doesn't beat around the bush, right to the point. Purport. In the opinion of Srila Sridhar Swami, the word asat atma bhavat in this verse indicates that the living entity is constantly disturbed by fear because he identifies his eternal self with the temporary material body and its paraphernalia. Similarly, Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur has stated, Bhakti pratikula deha geha dvishas asaktim. Because of one's attachment to one's temporary body and so-called home, family, friends, and so on, one's intelligence is always disturbed by fear, and one is unable to appreciate or practice pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So-called religious activities executed in the bodily conception of life are always accompanied by fear and anxiety about the ultimate result. But pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead frees one from fear and anxiety because it is executed on the platform of Vaikuntha, or the spiritual plane where there is no fear or anxiety. Why not go there? Why stay here in this miserable world? According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the process of bhakti yoga is so powerful that even in the stage of sadhana bhakti, in which one is practicing devotional service through rules and regulations, the neophyte can have a direct experience of fearlessness by the mercy of the Lord. As one's devotional service becomes mature, the Lord reveals himself to the devotee, and all fear is totally vanquished forever. Every living entity has a natural propensity to serve God, but because of false identification with the temporary body, one loses touch with this pure constitutional propensity, and instead, inauspiciously becomes attached to temporary sense gratification in the form of body, home, family, and so on. The result of such false attachment is continuing distress, which can be eradicated only by devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In this connection, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati has quoted the following verse, Tavad bhayam dravinadeha surin nimitam shokas spriha paribhavo vipulas chalo baha tavan namam tavam mamit jasadava graha arti mulam yavan nateng grimapayam abhayam pravinita lokaha. O my Lord, the people of the world are embarrassed by all material anxieties. They are always afraid. They always try to protect wealth, body, and friends. They are filled with lamentation and unlawful desires and paraphernalia, and they avariciously base their undertakings on the perishable conceptions of I and mine. As long as they do not take shelter of your safe lotus feet, they are full of such anxieties. Bhagavatam 3, 9, 6. Text 34. Even ignorant living entities can very easily come to know the Supreme Lord if they adopt those means prescribed by the Supreme Lord himself. The process recommended by the Lord is to be known as Bhagavata Dharma, or devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. There are many Vedic scriptures, such as the Manu Samhita, that present standard injunctions for the peaceful management of human society. Such Vedic knowledge is based on the Varnashram Dharma system, which scientifically divides human society into 4 occupational divisions, as well as 4 spiritual divisions. According to Sridhar Swami, however, knowledge that can bring one directly in contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Ati Rahasyam, or the most confidential knowledge. Ati Rahasyavara Samukhinaiva Bhagavata Vidusha Apipungsang Anja Sekunai Vatma Labdaye. Bhagavad Dharma is so confidential that it is spoken by the Lord Himself. The essence of Bhagavad Dharma is given in the Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna personally instructs Arjuna. Yet in the 11th canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, the Lord will give instructions to Uddhava that surpass even the teachings given to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. As Srila Prabhupada has stated, undoubtedly, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra just to encourage Arjuna to fight. And yet, to complete the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord instructed Uddhava. The Lord wanted Uddhava to fulfill his mission and disseminate knowledge which he had not spoken, even in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavatam 3.4.32 purport. Similarly, it is understood that the knowledge that will be presented here by the 9 Yogendras is not their personal concoction, but is authorized knowledge originally spoken by the Lord Himself. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the living entities in the course of their wanderings throughout the cycle of birth and death lose all trace of the personality of Godhead. But when they hear the eternally auspicious topics spoken by the Supreme Lord for their benefit and understand their eternal identities as spirit souls, the realized experience of being an eternal servant of Krishna becomes the basis of Bhagavad Dharma. In the soul's experience as a pure Vaishnava or servant of God, there is no consideration of being different from God or the same as God, nor is one interested in the kingdom of material sense gratification. The pure devotee simply perceives his particular devotional service to the Supreme Lord and sees himself as an individual part and parcel of the ultimate shelter. A pure devotee experiences that his very being is tied by ropes of loving devotion to the ultimate shelter himself in one of his direct personal expansions. And in such a perfect state of consciousness, the devotee can perceive the all-pervading variegated forms of the Absolute Truth. Checkmate. Text 35. O King, one who accepts this process of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead will never blunder on his path in this world. Even while running with eyes closed, he will never trip or fall. Have you ever been around little calves when they come out of their mother's womb? They just lay there for a few minutes and then just get up. And in a very short time they were going to run around. And we try to keep them safe, because otherwise they'll drink all the milk in the mother, and there'll be no, But if you let them go, they just go running, and there can be all kinds of in our garden, our forest garden in front of ours. There's all kinds of stones and bricks and obstacles and trees and little plants, and they just go, and they don't even look at anything. They never trip, they never fall, it's amazing to watch, amazing. You can literally sit there and watch them get out of the womb, get up, and if you stay there for a few hours, they'll just start running around. It's just incredible. Even while running with eyes closed, he will never trip or fall. Purport. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word anja, easily, which is used in the previous verse, is explained in this verse. He states, anja parinoktam sukartavyam vivinoti. By the word anja, the ease of performing bhakti yoga is established, and this will be elaborated in the present verse. In the Bhagavad Gita 9.2, the Lord himself states, Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam susukam kartum avyayam. The process of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternal, and it is very joyfully and naturally performed. Srila Prabhupada comments, the process of devotional service is a very happy one. Why? Devotional service consists of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. So one can simply hear the chanting of the glories of the Lord, or can attend philosophical lectures on transcendental knowledge given by authorized acharyas. Simply by sitting, one can learn. Then one can eat the remnants of the food offered to God, nice palatable dishes. In every state, devotional service is joyful. One can execute devotional service even in the most poverty-stricken condition. The Lord says, Patram pushpam palam toyam. He is ready to accept from the devotee any kind of offering, never mind what. Even a leaf, a flower, a bit of fruit, or a little water, which are available in every part of the world, can be offered by any person, regardless of social position, and will be accepted if offered with love. We have this experience every night here. We just take fruit, but the fruit's been cut nicely and offered to Krishna, and when you take just one bite, it's like, isn't it? It's not fruit anymore, it's something else. There are many instances of this in history. Simply by tasting the tulsi leaves offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, great sages like Sanat Kumara became great devotees. Therefore, the devotional process is very nice, and it can be executed in a happy mood. God accepts only the love with which things are offered to Him. The essential point to be understood here is that when a living entity surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he tells the Lord, my dear Lord, although I am most sinful and unqualified, and for so long have been trying to forget you, now I am taking shelter at your lotus feet. From this day on, I am yours. Whatever I possess, my body, mind, words, family, riches, I am now offering at your lotus feet. Please, do with me as you like. Shall I repeat that? You don't mind hearing that again? Is it okay? Okay. Oh, all right. The essential point to be understood here is that when a living entity surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he tells the Lord, my dear Lord, although I am most sinful and unqualified, and for so long have been trying to forget you, now I am taking shelter at your lotus feet. From this day on, I am yours. Whatever I possess, my body, mind, words, family, riches, I am now offering at your lotus feet. Please, do with me as you like. So the next time somebody asks you, how do I become a devotee? How do I surrender? It's right here. Plain English. Smoking gun. The Supreme Lord Krishna has repeatedly given assurance in the Bhagavad Gita that he will protect and redeem such a surrendered living entity, bringing him home back to Godhead for an eternal life in the Lord's own kingdom. Thus, the qualification of surrendering to the Lord is so great and spiritually potent that even if a surrendered soul is deficient in other aspects of pious life, his elevated status is protected by the Lord himself. In other processes, however, such as yoga, because one depends upon his own determination and intelligence and does not actually seek shelter of the Lord, one is subject to fall at any moment, being protected only by one's own flimsy, limited potency. Therefore, as stated in Srimad-Bhagavatam 10.2.32, Aruya krich trena padam padam tatak padantyado nadrita jushpad angrayaha. If one gives up the shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord and instead tries to advance in the yoga process by one's own determination, or if one tries to make progress in knowledge by one's own speculative power, surely one will eventually fall again to a mediocre material platform, having no protection other than one's own fallible strength. Therefore, the Vaishnava Acharyas, in their commentaries on this verse, have illustrated in various ways the vast superiority of bhakti yoga, or pure devotional service. In this connection, Sridhar Swami states, Nimilya netri davan api iha eshu bhagavata dharmeshu nasakalet. Nimilanam namangyanam yatahu shuti smriti ube netri viparam parikirtite. Ekena biklava, ekena vikala, kanu dvabyam anda prakirtitak iti. Even if running with both eyes closed, a devotee on this path of Bhagavad Dharma will not stumble. Closing one's eyes refers to being in ignorance of standard Vedic literatures. As it is stated, the Shruti and Smriti scriptures are the two eyes of the Brahmanas. Lacking one of them, a Brahmana is half blind, and deprived of both, he is considered completely blind. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:10 and 11, the Lord has clearly stated that even if a devotee is lacking in Vedic knowledge or ignorant of Vaishnava literature, the Lord personally enlightens him from within his heart if the devotee is actually engaged in loving service to the Lord. In this connection, Srila Prabhupada states, when Lord Chaitanya was in Benares promulgating the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, thousands of people were following him. Prakashananda, a very influential and learned scholar in Benares at that time, derided Lord Chaitanya for being a sentimentalist. Sometimes philosophers criticize the devotees because they think that most of the devotees are in the darkness of ignorance and are philosophically naive sentimentalists. Actually, that is not the fact. There are very, very learned scholars who have put forward the philosophy of devotion. But even if a devotee does not take advantage of their literatures or of his spiritual master, if he is sincere in his devotional service, he is helped by Krishna within his heart. So the sincere devotee engaged in Krishna consciousness cannot be without knowledge. The only qualification is that one carry out devotional service in full Krishna consciousness. Yet this facility given by the Lord cannot justify unauthorized concoctions put forward about the process of devotional service in the name of spontaneous devotion. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has stated, Bhagavat praptyartam pratan marga karanam tvati dushanavaham eva. If one manufactures his own process of devotional service For the sake of attaining the Supreme Lord, such a concoction will cause total ruination. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti goes on to quote, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Bina Aikantiki Harir Bhaktir Utpata Yaiva Kalpate. If one's so-called unalloyed devotion to Lord Hari does not take into account the regulations of the Shruti, Smriti, Puranas, and Pancharatra, it is nothing more than a disturbance to society. In other words, even if one is not learned in the Vedic literatures, if he is engaged in the loving service of the Lord, he is to be accepted as a pure devotee. Nonetheless, such loving devotion cannot in any way contradict the injunctions of revealed scriptures. Such groups, such as the Prakrita Sahajas, ignore the standard regulations of Vaishnava Dharma and engage in illicit, degraded activities, dressing as Radha and Krishna in the name of spontaneous devotion. They claim that because such spontaneous devotion is revealed by the Lord Himself, they need not refer to standard scriptures. Similarly, all over the world, there are pseudo-religionists who manufacture their own processes and claim they are receiving knowledge from the Lord Himself within their hearts. Therefore, it is very important to understand, as stated here, that spontaneous revelation by the Lord within the heart is meant not to alter the eternal process of devotional service to the Lord, but to give a supplementary facility to a sincere devotee who is ignorant of revealed scriptures. In other words, the revealed scriptures describe the eternal process of service to the Lord. Since the Lord is eternal and the living entity is eternal, the process of their loving relationship is also eternal. The Lord never changes His essential nature, nor does the living entity. Therefore, there is no need to change the essential process of loving service to the Lord. Special revelation by the Lord is meant to give scriptural knowledge by another means, and not to contradict scriptural knowledge. On the other hand, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has stated that a devotee is executing all the basic principles of Bhakti Yoga and advancing in devotional service. Such a Vaishnava should not be criticized for neglecting the secondary procedures. For example, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, established hundreds of spiritual communities in Western countries for practicing Krishna consciousness. The devotees in these communities give up all illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating, and constantly engage in service to Krishna. Such followers of Srila Prabhupada are able to make wonderful spiritual advancement and convert many thousands of people to the process of devotional service. In fact, all the faithful members of ISKCON who follow the standard regulations remain free from material contamination and make visible progress in going back home, back to Godhead. Such members of ISKCON cannot possibly execute all the details of the Varnashram Dharma system. In fact, many Western devotees can barely pronounce Sanskrit words and are not very expert in performing elaborate sacrifices based on chanting of mantras and offering of oblations. But because they are executing all the essential principles of Bhakti Yoga by giving up material sense gratification and constantly engaging in loving service to Krishna, their position is guaranteed both in this life and in the next. We have seen many sophisticated Sanskrit scholars and learned experts in the details of Vedic sacrifice who can hardly even follow the basic principles of human life, namely no illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling, and no intoxication. Such brilliant scholars and ritualistic performers are generally seen to be attached to a materialistic conception of life and are fond of mental speculation. Although in the Bhagavad Gita, The Lord himself has given perfect knowledge for all time. Such so-called scholars consider themselves more intelligent than the Lord, and thus speculate on the meaning of Vedic literature. Such speculation certainly constitutes a fall from perfect spiritual life. And what then is to be said of materialistic, fruitive activities, which are illusory in every sense of the term? The transcendental devotees are able to remain aloof from the pollution of fruitive activity and mental speculation, and that is the essential purport of this verse. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has warned that the words yan astaya indicate that the exalted status of a Vaishnava can never be accorded to one who is not following the basic regulations of Bhakti Yoga, nor can it apply to one who is sometimes serving Krishna and sometimes serving the illusory energy, Maya, by mental speculation or fruitive activities. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has concluded, in all dharmas, other than Bhagavata Dharma, one must consider the conditioned soul's qualification. But a soul surrendered to the Lord is never confounded by error, even if unqualified in all other respects. His feet never stumble, and he never falls. Even though wandering in the world at whim, he always resides in an auspicious place by the influence of his unswerving worship. The unique potency of Bhagavad Dharma does not appear in any of the other dharmas of the world. There is no comparison between a surrendered individual who has taken shelter of Bhagavad Dharma and the practitioner of any other dharma. Hare Krishna. What a purport. Okay, we'll stop our reading here. It's 7:20 already. I just got carried away. Sorry. I couldn't stop that last prayer. I could have stopped right in the middle, but I couldn't. I thought it was going to be over, and then I thought it was going to be over, and then I thought it was going to be over, and then I thought it was going to be over, and then I thought it was going to be over, but it wasn't. It just kept pouring nectar in the head. Amazing. And it doesn't, it doesn't allow one to get away. I can see that if one really isn't sincere, it's going to be very hard to keep reading these books. Because there's no way to go. There's no other way out. You have to surrender to Krishna and surrender to your own stupidity. Okay, that's it for tonight in terms of the reading. We got 10 minutes, so it's going to be a short reflection time. So yes, Honest John, start us off. Wait, get that mic into that man's mouth, quick. We don't want to miss a drop of nectar that comes out of his mouth. Okay.
We've said it before, but the last part really kind of hit home. The unique potency of the Bhagavata Dharma does not appear in any other dharmas of the world. There is no comparison between a surrendered individual who's taken shelter of the Bhagavata Dharma and the practitioner of any other dharma. Because, you can search in all other faiths and religions, but if you're a real searcher, you'll end up here.
You did that. I remember when you first came, you were telling me, you've always kind of like read around and checked it out, checked this out, checked that out.
So I already knew that.
Yeah.
It just confirmed it, because it's like this whole, there's so much in here, but I just something simple. I like that point that he made, because it does, everybody here has been on their own journey, and we ended up here, Thank you.
Essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquent. Thank you very much. Honest John, we call him. Always tells the truth.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So this reading was full of nectar and just brought out some reflections that I thought I would share. Just
Put the microphone.
looking back on my life, I remember in middle school, I used to walk home from school, and I don't remember exactly the reason why, but maybe boredom. I remember I would close my eyes and I would see how far I could go without like opening them. And most of the time it would either be like, am I going to feel the grass? Am I going to walk off the sidewalk? Or am I going to hit something? But a lot of times just out of fear of the unknown of hitting something, I would open my eyes, I'd try to like count to 6 strides. But it's funny because recognizing that actually if we just, everybody's in, are we in anxiety because we don't understand our eternal position as being part and parcels of Krishna, and we have an eternal relationship. So earlier in the purports it talked about anxiety and fear. And then it brought the point of the power of devotional service. And knowing that if we can just come to the path of devotional service, how potent it is. That when we come into knowledge, recognizing that Krishna is our eternal friend. So we just serve him, and then all anxiety is taken away because he wants to protect us. And those verses are just very deep, and that's just a very shallow realization or understanding of those verses from my perspective.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Yeah, that kind of parrots that one sentence that we repeated, the only thing that we actually repeated and this time and read again, from this day I'm yours. I've been trying to, do everything, but I've just failed, and I got nowhere else to go, but so now I'm just, I'm surrendered to you. Now you do with whatever you like with me, you do. From this day I'm yours. And if you do that sincerely, even once, then Krishna takes care of you from that time on. Even you may not know it, you may still be wandering around, being a fool. But Krishna won't not. He'll guide you and protect you. Tesham evanukam partam aham bhajama gyantamaha nashyam yatmabhavasto jnanadipini bhasvata. He keeps keeps taking us, putting us in the right place, guiding us, giving us light. It's his promise. That's why it was the emphasis. I liked the emphasis on, Krishna speaking directly, the absolute truth, the supreme authority speaking directly to us, the Bhagavad Gita. Can't get any higher authority than that, the absolute authority. You just accept it, and you're home. Simple as that. It's so blissful. Yeah. Four minutes, gentlemen. Okay. Prana, leave us with the right taste.
I liked one sentence that said, special revelation by the Lord is meant to give scriptural knowledge by another means and not to contradict scriptural knowledge.
Oh.
That discussion in there was really important because it contextualized what it means to be directed by the Lord due to one's sincerity, but also, and due to his mercy, but also what it means to be directed by our mind and our concoctions and our whims and speculations. So it should always be in accordance with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra.
I was thinking something when that part came up. You just jogged my memory. I was thinking, these devotees who think that when you advance, you don't have to be so strict in the principles. They're thinking the 4 regulative principles, because that's what they want to do, break them. But that's not what it means. It means that, there's a spontaneity in your relationship with Krishna that allows you to be able to not be so concerned with the reverence, but more direct, more spontaneous, more friendly, or whatever the relationship is. But it doesn't mean that externally you don't follow the principles. It doesn't mean that you stray away from, the laws of God. How can you get there and stray away from the laws of God? I mean, like I said, and I've said this many times over this last time, but I've lived in Govardhan for a long time, and I've seen so many devotees, ex-devotees from ISKCON, go out to Radhakund and then look back and criticize their spiritual masters, and even Prabhupada sometimes, but their own spiritual masters, and the movement that actually enlightened them to the existence of Radha. They wouldn't even know about Radhakund if it wasn't for them, but they think that they're higher now, and they look down at them and they criticize. And they're thinking that they're going toward Gopi Bhav, to Radha Bhav. They're thinking they're doing that, but actually, it's like you can't get to where you're going by going in the opposite direction. It's not possible, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to jump into the Radhakund and live there, but they're, criticizing other devotees who have actually helped them and bring them to that position. And then what happens? They fall down and they go away. I've seen it happen. Very few rare souls, sincere souls, not everyone. I don't mean to paint the thing with a brush and say everyone is, but the vast, vast majority is like that. It's the most political place on the planet.
Maharaj, what happens to these souls in the next life? Where do they get a human birth?
No, but if you do that, if you criticize other Vaishnavas, you're going to go to hell. You're not going to go to Goloka Vrindavan, you're going to go to hell. Why? Because these devotees are dear to Krishna, and they're Lord Chaitanya, and they're giving up their... I just read a few very nice purports in which Prabhupada was talking about this, how, the empowered devotees who are actually spreading Krishna consciousness and by the will of Krishna they can't do it without being empowered by Krishna. So then if you criticize them, then you're simply waiting for the punishment out of envy. So if you envy devotees who are empowered to spread Krishna consciousness and criticize them on the plea of I don't know what, I can't even imagine doing something like that. But if you do, then your future, your what does Prabhupada say? Your whereabouts is unknown. What to speak of your destination? Your whereabouts at the moment is unknown. And with that, it's 7:31, and I'm going to close up shop for tonight. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It was wonderful having your association. It was very potent tonight, because the hearts and ears are very receptive in soaking it in. It makes it easier to read and easier to taste. So I thank you. And I thank all of you. We had one comment. I think Rati making some silly comment about me or something. She usually does.
Okay. Rati Manju, every time I hear you speak about Krishna consciousness, it becomes increasingly interesting and meaningful to me.
Oh, Hare Krishna. Well, Rati, your ears are receptive. What can I say? Hare Krishna. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. The Kavi Muni ki jai. Maharaj Nimi ki jai. Narada Muni ki jai. Vasudev ki jai. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Sama Beta Bhakta Brinda ki jai. See you tomorrow night at... No, we've changed now. This is an announcement by the... We just got on the map. We got an award at the Temple President's meeting. Houston Yatra has now been glorified as the most increased party, percentage-wise, of their results.
What? Book distribution.
We're on the map. We're on the map. We're on the map. I don't know how it's going to get out there, but it is. It's there. It's been stated at the meeting in D.C. Vaisheshika Prabhu sent the message, and then Prana put it out there. So we're going to adjust our Saturday reading time to 6 o'clock to facilitate the Sankirtan devotees. So tomorrow we'll see you at 6 o'clock normal time, and we'll have a 4:30 on Sundays to facilitate the Sunday program at the temple. But Saturdays, from now on, will be at 6 o'clock, the reading, Central Time. See you there, right here in the live studios of Radha Lane. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.